Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hobothinga podcast. My name is Crystal. Yeah, I'm hearing echo.
Yeah, so that you don't have to turn off your cameras, but do mute yourselves and unmute so we don't hear echo back. So sometimes we do that.
So what do you mean, like mute our microphones till we're ready to?
Like I'm gonna mute
Yes.
my.
Okay.
So when the other person's speaking, we don't hear the echo. And so when you go to speak, you unmute. Sorry, Louis.
Love you long time. Okay. All right. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hobothinga podcast. My name is Crystal Cedino, and I am the Training Development Manager for the Native Learning Center, and I'm thrilled that all of you are tuning in for another episode this week, so thank you, thank you. With me today, I have my right-hand lady. Go ahead, Cora, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Cora Anthony, the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center.
Thank you. And with us today, we have two very special guests, and we're very excited to have them here. So I'm going to go ahead and just briefly introduce them, and then we'll get them to really talk about some of the work that they do and the organizations that they work under. But first, I'll go ahead and introduce Neil Weichel, who is the Executive Director of the Ho-Chunk Housing Community Development Agency of the Ho-Chunk Tribe, Tomah, Wisconsin. Go ahead and wave and then say hello, Neil.
Hello.
Thank you. And then our additional guest is Kate Brown, the Senior Program Manager for Public and Tribal Housing of Elevate. Go ahead and wave and say hello, Kate. You were muted.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. All right. So today's topic, and before we get into formal introductions and so on and so forth, today's topic, we're going to be discussing the need and growth of small, affordable, multi-housing projects for tribal residents. I know Cora and I are actually very excited for this because we just like seeing different options out there and possibilities, especially in Indian country, which we both know, and I think all four of us can recognize as very underserved community. So very, very excited to do this today. But before we get started, let's have formal introductions. Neil, go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the tribe that you work for and so on and so forth.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and good afternoon to everyone or whatever time of day it is. So my name is Neil Weichel, and I'm with the member of the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin, and I am the Executive Director of Ho-Chunk Housing and Community Development Agency. We are the Ho-Chunk Nation's tribally designated housing entity, and we've been a 501c3 nonprofit doing development work and public housing for the Ho-Chunk Nation in western Wisconsin and really all of Wisconsin. The Ho-Chunk Nation doesn't have a reservation, so we provide housing services in all counties of Wisconsin and extend those services to wherever tribal members live in the United States. And we've been an organization, 501c3, I think since 2004. But before that, our agency has been working with the Ho-Chunk Nation right alongside the Ho-Chunk Nation since 1969, I think. So we've been in business for a while, providing affordable housing activities for the Ho-Chunk Nation tribal members and other tribal members living in our service area. And so that's who I am and what we do. But we're, again, in central Wisconsin, so the Ho-Chunk Nation, a lot of people not familiar. We used to be the Wisconsin Winnebago, and there's our sister tribe is the Wisconsin or the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska. But we are the same. We're the same people. But our Ho-Chunk was our original name, so we went back to that in 1994. But that's where we're at and who we are.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Neil. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now let's go ahead and get to know Kate just a little bit more. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Kate.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to participate. I'm Kate Brown, and I'm with Elevate. We're a nonprofit organization that's headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. And at Elevate, we want everyone to have access to clean and affordable heat, power, and water in their homes and communities. Our goal is to make the clean energy economy accessible to everyone in order to fight climate change. And currently, we are working with Neil and his agency and his staff on this affordable housing project development. We're providing technical assistance to assist Neil.
That is amazing. And I'm looking forward to hearing more, about that. So awesome. All right. Well, with that, why don't we jump right in? Can you expand on what are small housing units and why it's important to plan and develop these smaller homes under 1,000 square feet?
Sure, I guess I'll start. So I think as we get into, or as people have talked about tiny homes and kind of as, there's the TV shows and people are talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great to have these tiny homes? I think from a tribal housing perspective, or I don't even think it has to be tribal perspective, but where we look at using federal dollars, we have certain standards we still have to follow, certain things that on a practical nature, and sure, tiny homes are cool, and I'm not going to diss on tiny homes, but looking at the practical side of having a home that can fit just about anyone, and a tiny home, if you are empowered to live that way or change your lifestyle, that's great, and it can be very economical and sustaining. But when you're looking at from affordable house, or affordable housing for people, can anybody move in there? And, is it going to meet your accessibility standards? And especially using some concepts, universal design, can anybody come and visit you? Can anybody come live there? Can you get into your bathroom? Can you move through your house? And so we've come up with like a small home. I think we've used that language, and I think other people around are using that language also of small homes. You can still have a sustainable home and be built relatively inexpensively, but still the cost per square foot almost goes up the smaller you go. Like it costs you more per square foot the smaller you get, because you still have to have your mechanicals and you still have to have your insulation values and these type of things coming into play when you build a home, your mobilization of your contractors, your foundation. So we looked at, have really been exploring for a very long time. I think it was many, many years ago, over 10 years ago, we looked at this gable house at the University of Illinois. I can't remember what they call it. There was the solar decathlon, and they had this gable home, and I think that was 640 square foot, and it was such an interesting concept for us that long ago, 10 years ago, to start developing. Can we build one of these, and not necessarily have to be with the solar decathlon concept. I think the developed price on that was 400 some thousand, but could we do it affordably? And so we've really been trying to find that concept and have it work for us, and be affordable, have the universal design, and be something that people would want to live in, not forced to live in, or like say, oh, I have to live there. And so it has been a struggle for us to, again, are these tiny homes, or are these smaller homes? Are they just for, in a sense, affluent people or rich people that can afford to live like that? And we were hoping to kind of crack the code, but we're right in the middle of COVID, got in the middle of some of our plans. But that was kind of our goal of what we wanted to do, and we used a lot of enterprise foundations, green community checklists, to have kind of this concept I have always called just being a common sense construction. It doesn't have to have species materials. It doesn't have to be made of, tin foil or, kind of weird building concepts. That you can build an affordable house that's very sustainable with just generally accepted construction principles. And as long as you're doing it with common sense approach, laying it on your site. And so that's kind of been our kind of like our driving force going forward. We wanted to have it just off the shelf products that we could use.
That's really interesting, and I'm gonna jump in there because out of everything you said, the first thing that stood out to me is like, oh shoot, I live in a small home because the townhome that I live in is about 800 something square feet, so it's just right under 1,000, and it's so true. A lot of I mean, I don't think it's too expensive, but a lot of people are like, how do you make it work? But it is very accessible, and you find fun ways to find storage and make it feel homey, and it just kind of like you make it work. So you get creative in those senses. So I'm imagining like within tribal communities a good like multi-housing project with how like little townhomes like mine. I mean, it's completely doable, and I've lived here what now, almost 3 years, and it feels cozy and like home, and it doesn't feel like I'm like cramped in or whatnot. So no, I'm very excited to see these projects get developed in areas that need them so much. Crystal, you were gonna say something?
Well, I was just gonna say that I totally am on board with how you said like making those smaller spaces work, because at one point when I was completely living on my own, I had an apartment that was 500 square feet. It was a studio. It was very tiny, but I made that place work for me like no other. Like it was crazy. And I remember when I moved in, my friend was like, "Is all of this furniture going to like fit in here?" And I go, "You'll see. I have it like exact so that everything fits like right where it's supposed to, and then I have storage and whatever else." So that's cool. I didn't think about that. That's Yeah, like Cora, like you've got a nice size and everything, and it doesn't feel smushed or anything. Yeah, so that's cool. No, that's cool. But okay, that was it. That was my tidbit on that.
If I could just add, usually the tiny homes or under 1,000 square feet are very sensibly designed. So you have the maximum utilization of space. So you have good storage or good layout, and you can create a very cozy, comfortable environment. So when they're done well, that they really can be fun.
And I think the concept there too we were going with is, again, a smaller home, the more efficiently you can heat it with, or the more efficiently you can provide
Right.
kind of those mechanicals for. And the modeling that we had used Elevate for kind of really showed the comparisons between an LP, the liquid petroleum, so your tank or bottle gas, to natural gas, and then geothermal, and then these mini split systems. And what would be more affordable mechanical going into some of these units. One of the concepts that we've embraced, like I think from a practical standpoint, that Elevate Energy has also been trying to encourage, is an all electric home, both from the sustainable as you're using more green energy production, but to eliminate a lot of multiple billing for low income families. And so Elevate has had this concept of doing an all electric home, or using affordable housing to go all electric. And we used the concept a number of years ago. And so sometimes I don't like talking about it. So we have, a gas company, and even though gas is cheaper to heat water or dry your clothes from that standpoint, but where we had some of our tenants making that hard choice of, they had to pay a bill. They could pay one bill, but they couldn't pay the other. And you get into summertime here in Wisconsin, and you can let your gas bill go. You don't need to to heat your home, and you don't pay it from April to November. We don't encourage that. I'm not saying yeah, don't pay your bills, but where it comes down to the of being able to keep the lights on, keep your refrigerator cool, watch TV, or charge your phone. They were making that choice versus paying their gas bill. And but really but then it comes to hot water. Well, so we converted all of our rental units to electric, because from the standpoint of our goal was to have safe and sanitary housing for all of our residents. We wanted them to have that hot water. And so kind of to meet our tenants in the middle, like we said, okay, we will at least put the hot water heaters to electric, and that way they're paying that electric bill. And we don't have to worry that they're not going to have that kind of sanitary effort in the summertime. And we did, I would say 15 years ago, we did try to use electric or solar hot water heaters. They're very expensive. They do provide hot water all year round, and it's probably a 40% reduction because the water heater is your most expensive appliance that you would have in your home if you have an electric one. So it did cut back some costs, but they're very, very expensive and really don't pay back. So we looked at other technologies, on-demand water heaters, those type of things. And but so we've followed that concept that Elevate talked about, is that all-electric home.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's great. And so I do have a question because, like, again, I'm thinking about my living space right now, and I'm often thinking, like, where else can I find space, or how else can I reimagine space to make it more functional, maybe like a little office or whatnot. In these multi-housing, small multi-housing projects, right? Are there options to expand the homes to make them work for the tenants?
There are some options that we've put into seeing very creative. Again, as long as you have, we were looking at accessibility, and so that universal design, or that the 36-inch door being some of the hardest challenge. So pocket doors is a very easy concept to give you more space. You don't have to have that room. The bathroom design, still having your turning radius inside there, but doing a combination roll-in shower. I can't remember what the concept is, but basically you just have like it's a wet bath concept. So you can save room by just closing your toilet. It's not it's something that you have to kind of picture in your head. So your shower is like right over in the same area as your toilet, and you just basically turn the shower on and it drains through the floor.
Yeah.
But you have still that concept of sharing the space. One thing we've done up here, and I'm not sure you can do it all over the country, but is having a 4-foot crawl space, and we call it it's a rough concept for people to get when you use this term, but it's called a mud floor, because when you say crawl space, you imagine like what's under my grandma's house, and she had this crawl space, and it was about this. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's about 12 inches or 14 inches, and you had to crawl, and it was dirt. That's not the crawl space we're talking about. It basically is like a mini basement, and it's 4 feet of space under your house. And a mud floor is a mud concrete floor, and so it's a concrete floor. You condition that space underneath, meaning you insulate it and you provide some heating and cooling, mostly heating in the wintertime. But that is a lot. Basically, is doubling your square footage for storage. Storm shelters, if you need to use it, and you insulate it from from the elements, and so it creates conditioned space and helps keep your house warm, actually. So that has been a huge storage savings for people. But there are also, like one of the things we always talk about, we refer people, like, say, look at this go to IKEA and look, you can buy like the under your bed storage, kind of these pop-up linen closets, or closets that kind of go in the corners. So using some of that dead space that people don't normally use. Just the things to be careful though with using a lot of that area is we worry about. One thing that Kate is kind of an expert in is mold, or making sure you have indoor air quality. So making sure you're in those dead spaces that you do have ventilation going in there, so you don't get that staying in the air. A lot of times those corners don't get a lot of air, inside there.
Right. Neil, I could comment. A couple other things that we've talked about in the initial design is, if it's under 1,000 square feet, is maybe to create a second room, which is a multi-purpose room. It could be used as an office, it could be used as a bedroom, but it could be converted to whatever the need is. And then the other option, if the tribe wanted to do that, is also as more people come to live in the home, if the family grows or extended family, be able to easily put an addition on if you needed to do that, to expand. Yep.
I do want to say, the whole wet bath concept is not completely like out of pocket. Maybe here in the States, but I spent 2 years living in South Korea,
Ah,
and that is super common over there. And so
oh,
I remember when I first moved into my apartment and they gave me the tour, it was this tiny, tiny place. And I was like, okay, so where's my shower? Because there's the concepts of like an actual shower is very uncommon over there. It's more common the wet bath. So there was like a detached shower head literally over my bathroom sink and over my toilet. And it in the end, like by the end of my time abroad, I was like, this is so functional because I shower, everything gets cleaned. I leave the door open so there's no mold and humidity, and it's like it's all done. But in different countries in Asia, I know I saw it when I traveled to Japan as well. It's very common to have the wet bath. And another thing that they did that kind of sounded similar to what you were saying, Neil, their heating systems are all underground. So they have the in the way old times, they would put coal underneath the home. So the heating came from the floor up. And not only did it save space, but it heated the house a lot faster. And now, whatever pipes and all that stuff that they use, they still do it underneath the floor. So in the dead of winter, I would wake up and my feet would be nice and toasty.
yeah,
And it
nice.
did save a lot of space because I didn't have to have a heater or whatnot. So it's not a completely foreign concept. It might just be a little bit of getting used to over here in the States. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boats are like that as well. You have a wet bath usually, so everything's, in one little area, and you take your little squeegee and you squeegee everything,
Yeah,
what's
you're right.
left, and you
Right.
just,
That's a good,
yeah,
yeah.
yep,
Mhm.
and you just take care of it, and it's, and then you're good to go. And it's, I don't know, it's easy. I like, it's not weird to me because I grew up like doing that with like my family and stuff like that. So, but I can understand where some people would be like, that's a little odd. But no. Yeah, so okay. Well, with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Um, since we're talking about options for expanding homes and stuff like that, are there different construction types, and how can we get to net zero energy sustainable housing?
I'm gonna let Neil take that because I know they've been looking at different construction types.
Sure. Again, I've been promoting just your standard uh, frame construction. There are a couple different options now, and we've really looked at getting away from your standard 2x6 wall construction. Um, every 16 inches of being a stud, and looking at what they call SIP panels, or super insulated wall panels. And even though, so it's basic, so a SIP panel is a plywood on one side, styrofoam in the middle, and a plywood on on sandwiching this styrofoam. And you say styrofoam, and I'm probably not using the correct term of styrofoam. They're like polystyrene something or other, but it's treated for fire retardant. And an interesting concept that these polystyrene um, inside or styrofoam wall sections, they are actually better for the environment than using conventional lumber. A lot of the lumber in the United States is actually imported from Canada, and the shipping cost and the fossil fuel of bringing, and first you're cutting it, you're putting it on trucks, you're moving it to a factory, you're milling it, you're drying it, and then you're putting it on trains or other semis again, and you're transporting it to thousands of miles. If you can get your SIP panel to be within your SIP panel manufacturers within 200 miles, that fossil fuel, the expenditure of fossil fuel to using a supposedly a non-green styrofoam wall is actually more sustainable for the environment, and it provides um, great insulation value called thermal bridging. So if you imagine your normal 2x6 construction house, a 2x6 has like an R value of I think it's like 8 or 9, and meaning that you can actually transfer heat or cold through that 2x6. So that piece of wood that is in your wall framing of your house, heat or cold will go through that, and you'll lose that value inside your home. And so if you were to take your standard house, your 1,200 square foot house or your 1,000 square foot house, 1/3 of your wall section is actually that 2x6. So you have that R value of 9 to 10 that you have in 1/3 of your house, and the rest you're putting in insulation, whether it's spray foam insulation or bad insulation. And that R18 wall is only for 2/3 of your house, and the rest of it is on framing. And then you put in your windows and your doors, and so your SIP panel, actually you can keep an R24 wall at that same level of thickness. In the South there, and in Florida or in the areas that it is a strengthened structure, and it has it can hurricane lows, or can't remember what the term there is for penetration, but it stops the 100-mile-an-hour 2x4 or whatever that strength test is to be called a strengthened structure. So that is something that we really wanted to use more of, the SIP panels. But again, that is kind of like I said, like, you need somebody that knows how to do it. You have to order it from a factory, and you have to have a supply stream built up. And just about the time that you get these people to say, oh yeah, this is a great product, it's all good, and then the guys are doing something else now. So it really is, I think that's the challenge of getting it part of the building trades, of saying, yeah, this is a viable piece of construction. A lot of people are using them, but again, it might be more affluent or people that have the money to do it. But you can still use that regular, your regular frame structure, sealing the bottom plates, using sealing tape, eliminating as many air infiltrations as you can in your house, not only for winter but for cooling also, and having good ventilation in your home goes a long ways. We kind of didn't really, and again, this is how we actually got tied into Kate. We didn't really look at the in the 90s they over insulated houses, but then in the early 2000s we had mold in our houses, and so and they were all related. You over insulate your house, and I guess you guys in Florida know all about this. You have to have ventilation, and that comes back to the efficiency of your ventilation, and those sound building practices that work for insulating your house also work for moisture reduction in your house. And so that's where we really tied these together of, this is something we have to do anyway, and so let's do it with using sound building practices, and that increases your efficiency as well as your air quality.
Your air exchange. And Neil, the SIP panels are fairly easy to construct, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
It's just hard for the people, your local contractor, once they learn how to do it, and it's easy for them to do. It's supposed to cut down your actual labor cost from stick frame construction using the SIP panels. It's supposed to be 2 times faster.
Right. Yeah.
But then you have to pay a specialized contractor 2 times as much.
Or
so
train, right? Yeah.
So we keep waiting, because you'll see these SIP panels, and maybe Crystal, at the conference you might get a guy who's going to say, oh yeah, and use these SIP panels. But it's one of those things that it's a trade-off. The cost of labor versus the cost of the material, they are less expensive, but again, the cost to put them up, because you are using these contractors that kind of have that experience, but they are relatively easy to learn, and the learning curve goes a long ways to keeping them being built like that.
So
but
training, is important.
Go ahead.
The training, yeah.
So then I know you've kind of touched on this, and you've made little comments here and there. So how can we move forward building these type of housing projects and whatnot while still making them affordable. And you said this phrase and it caught my attention. So I want a little bit more detail. What's common sense affordable housing? What do you define by that?
Well, I think that's a good question, because I do say it a lot. So thank you for calling me out on it. And part of, say, common sense approaches, when you talk about energy sustainability, and whether it's the Florida gas and light people, or our energy. So up here we have Energy Star, and we HHCA used to give these classes. We talk about, everybody say, oh, well, we want to be more sustainable, and here, how about these solar panels, or can we do a windmill, or can we do the solar hot water heaters, like this stuff that looks cool, and people are thinking, oh yeah, and we're going to have a 12-year payback. But the common sense approach is more what, like kind of what you hear them always talk about, is your low hanging fruit. And so these things that you can do right now, to remove like ghost loads. So like simply turning off your computer every day or unplugging your transformer from the wall saves you $12 a year. And because it has a ghost load. And so it's like, so that's where it's like common sense. But so if we take that common sense to building a home, so as I had mentioned, when you put your conventional stick frame bottom plate, the part that goes under your floor, and your contractor will put this, by code, he's got to put this little piece of styrofoam underneath it, and it's called a sill sealer, and it was used to keep bugs out and a little bit of air infiltration. But if you go the extra step and you use a very pliable mastic, so this caulk, like a thick bead of this caulk around where you're putting that sill sealer, because you have to buy it by code, you save, by doing that, about $60 a year by sealing your bottom plate. So then you go to around your windows, and you're putting in a window, and so they use this tape that goes around your window, and doing that is like $20 a year in savings by putting that tape on. But wait, there's more. There's a thicker piece of tape, so that when you put your nail through it, it seals around that nail, because even that little nail going through the regular tape that you're supposed to put, like the tie-back tape, this new stuff seals that nail hole, and will save you even more money. So there's little things that you say, well, you'll put into it first right now, more common sense. Maybe not having great big windows, or spending a little more on windows, because again, even the best window you can buy has an R value of like R6. And so a lot of people say, oh, I love the natural light, I want it. But if you can do things like glazing, so in the summertime you reflect the glazing, or you have an overhang that's a little bit longer, it doesn't cost you that much. But so everybody knows, in the summertime the sun goes high over your head, and then in the wintertime it goes low. And again, I don't know how that works out for Florida, but in Illinois, where Kate's at, it's like the best of both worlds. It's like the middle of the country has the best sun. Up here in Wisconsin, so we have longer overhangs that face the south and the west, so you get that daylight into your home during your summertime, and that's free, or sorry, in the wintertime, and then you shade it in the summertime, so you keep that sun out. So it's little things like that that are common sense. How you put your house on your lot to take advantage of natural light, and where you do have your windows to let light into, like, where are you living in your house? Are you living in your living room, in your kitchen, or is your family spending more time in their rooms? Maybe that's where you have their desks or their study time. So you position your house where you would be living. So it's not the same for everyone, because you'd say, well, everybody's going to be in their living room, or everybody's going to be in their kitchen. But you might move that to a family room, or to take advantage of all available light during the daytime. So it's being something easy for people. And again, when it's your own home, and you can be more committed to it or know more about it, you can provide even more of those type of common sense approaches. But we're talking about rent, so I'm talking about rental housing for affordable. So we kind of do a lot of that for people, for them not to have to put much thought into how we're laying out their houses or why their houses are facing this direction. Because most people think, oh, why is my house funny on the lot here? Why is this rental faced like this? Well, and it's to kind of save money. Like, so even opening your windows in the morning, allowing some cool air to come in, so those kind of just common sense items that low hanging fruit, the things that don't cost you a lot.
Yeah.
Putting a piece of insulation underneath your water heater saves $12 a year. So it's like there's a lot of these little things that just aren't talked about, and it takes a little time to do it at the beginning, and and it's some of those things that people just forget about doing.
Right.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of the common sense approach in 4 key areas with energy efficiency, universal design, so people have, access, smart functional design of space and storage, and then sustainable environment. So you have good indoor air quality and comfort. And within those 4 areas, like Neil was just saying, you incorporate just these common sense approaches, and you can save $10 here, $12 here, 5% here, 5%. And then it really starts adding up where you have a highly functional home that's comfortable, you have good indoor air quality, but also it's affordable. And that's kind of what Neil's been working on and looking at. And it is doable, right? I think, Neil, yeah, you're getting there. And that's
Yeah,
exciting. Yeah.
we're trying, and we can always do better. From again,
Mhm.
our houses are, I'd mentioned, like 50 years old, so we have some houses that are and going back through and increasing the efficiency of your furnaces. We've actually again added air conditioning, and that was something we did not do that necessarily as a creature comfort for low income tenants with central air conditioning. We did it more for moisture reduction. But and still having that cost be, they never, that wasn't something that tenants were paying for before. But so that's where we wanted to make sure that if we did put an air conditioner, it was going to be a high SEER, something that was efficient for them to pay, and to have kind of like that concept of, added value to the rent. They're still paying, 30% of their rent for this low income home, but it's affordable, but we want to make sure that they can save money as much as possible for them living in this 50-year-old affordable rental unit. Um, so there are always things that we can do better. I say like, oh, our places are great, because there's a lot of things that we um, try to incorporate and like, so my title on the thing says modernization, and so that was part of what I did before, was try to modernize the home to get them up to higher standards or higher qualities. And I lost my train of thought here for a second, but that I should have closed my door when the gals was waving at me. So, but I think they're just doing that because they know I was on a podcast today. But but part of that, even that concept of how you set up landscape on, having that shade on your houses is great in the summertime. And if you had deciduous trees where they lose their leaves, and that helps put the sun on the homes in the wintertime up here. So just little things like that go a long ways. And it's things that people don't have to think about, because you're still going to have those kids that go in and out, and they don't shut the door. You're still going to have people that when they get a lot of company over, they open the front door in the wintertime. You're going to have your house get very humid, and have, when there's a big birthday party and they're cooking and the windows
Right.
get steamy. So you're still going to have all that stuff that you lose the efficiency, but the things that we try to do just to make it as easy as possible. Because if you do have those people that are committed and they do have time, or they know to shut their shades before they go, to turn their thermostat down, to do those little things to save them even more money, that helps them out. So we've yeah, so we've tried to do that. I laughed because I was just thinking about turning the thermostat down. We put in one of the projects we put in the programmable thermostats, but then if you don't have the education side, you
How to
know,
use them.
of us showing them how to,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and then they keep saying it's broken, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've gone back to the old round one because it's
Right.
easy. People know how to do that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I was gonna ask, how, I mean, like, how is it that people find out about these things? You know what I mean? Because we call them common sense, but I think there's also that level of like common sense isn't so common, you know, that phrase. So, I mean, how did y'all come to like find these little like things that people can do to like improve their housing?
I think for Neil's case, it's years of experience. Because Neil, how long have you been at this? You've been at it for a while, working
Yeah.
on different projects and what works and doesn't work, and new technologies that come out and what's available, and how ease of use and user friendly. Those are all real key things too. And just pilot testing some things which may work or it may not. But that's kind of how, yeah. But I'm
Yeah,
like,
no,
Neil's the
yeah, that's amazing.
Well, I think again, where we started working with the University of Illinois, and that's how we were introduced to Kate. She was actually working for HUD at the time for indoor air quality.
yeah.
We were back when we used to call mold mildew, and you know, and before you know, mold was the big scare. We were looking at indoor air quality. Why does our housing have mold? You know, we didn't have it before, and what's going on here? And I think that's where I started calling it common sense. But if you look around again, the enterprise green communities checklist is a really great alternative to LEED certification, and it's free. You know, and those green community folks or the enterprise folks are such a great resource to give you free training. And there's groups like Elevate Here now that are you know, kind of filling in that gap behind enterprise. But your local power people, like I said, Florida Gas and Light, you know, Energy Star, they have these components out there, and they kind of have all said the same thing. And it might be that experience that I've always seen them, you know, and there's you know, kind of cluing in like, oh yeah, they all are saying about the same thing here. You know, doing these sealing of the sealing of your air infiltration sources. And that's the neat thing I did notice in the solar decathlon, and they do this competition. It used to be every other year or every few years, and they've slowed it down, or they do more. I can't remember, because every time I'm like, oh, I'm going to go out to Washington D.C., and they used to have set these houses up on the mall. But if you look at the concepts, like they're, you know, and it's just like racing. You know, race cars were used to help develop regular cars, you know, but they just use the high components. So you looked at some of the concept of what are these solar decathlete houses doing to get you know, net zero or like energy plus, or how, you know. And so there's certain concepts they were all doing, you know, small windows, small spaces, over insulated areas, indoor air quality, you know. So if you look at kind of the extreme measures they're going, so well, what can we do that's affordable? Because again, I think those houses are $400 a square foot,
Right.
and you know, and that's like probably 5 years ago kind of time frame. If we're looking at taking that to our goal was $150 a square foot.
Right.
But through COVID inflation, we're I think right now we're about $225 a square foot for residential construction.
Right.
And our net zero house that we had in concept, that did go up to $300 a square foot, and that was like, that just wasn't affordable to us, like a 300 square foot home. So we had to scale it back, take a lot of that common sense stuff that we wanted, and to get it down again to that, you know, we're through just regular COVID inflation, I think that $225 per square foot. We're hoping that once the supply chain issues clear up, once the lumber issues clear up, I don't know if the prices are ever going to go down, but I don't think they'll be inflated. That's the like maybe that $150 a square foot is going to be something we'll never see again. But I think there was somebody had mentioned the Taj Mahal. That was only $400 a square foot. but I don't know how that's going to relate to
Right.
that's where affordable housing is going to go. And there's only so many resources because we get all of our funding from grants. And talking about $400 a square foot just doesn't seem
Right.
affordable.
Right. So Neil, can I give a little background on the solar decathlon? So the solar decathlon is a competition that the Department of Energy sponsors for a lot of universities, and there's also international countries that participate. And the challenge is to build smaller footprint, sustainable, affordable, well, not so much affordable, but energy efficient homes. And there's been some very cool, interesting designs done in terms of space and structure and energy efficiency. The affordability isn't, I think they've added that element of affordability. That's where it can get a little tricky if you move into triple pane windows, or sometimes they use really high-end energy efficiency appliances. But that's where if you like a certain design, you can start tweaking it and bringing, the cost down. And that's some of the things that we've been working with Neil's agency with, to kind of maybe pick a few designs that look really functional, practical, and then try to tweak it down to a more affordable price. So that's been kind of interesting and fun. And the way we've been doing that is with a process called building energy modeling, where you can model the building to determine how well it functions, and then where you want to tweak or how you can tweak it to get it within your price range.
Oh, that's amazing. And I don't know, I just find it very, very fascinating and incredible, because definitely I think it's really important to see where you can, make things more affordable and lower cost, so that, like, Neil, hopefully it'd be cool one day to see prices go down back to $150 per square foot. That'd be amazing. We'll see. Hopefully. I'm gonna stay hopeful, but yeah, no, I can see that. My sister's in-laws actually built their home during COVID, and with the original price that they had established ended up increasing because of there's an issue with wood. I think there was a not a deficit, but, like, there wasn't as much of it, so they were charging more for it, and the cost of their home ended up costing a little bit more. But at the end, they were really happy with how functional and everything they made it. So it's important, and that's cool. But with that being said, what are some of the issues communities looking to build these types of housing communities might face?
Well, I think it depending on what communities you would move into, a lot of community, again, like in the, I don't know, say the super 2000s or whatever you would call it, a lot of communities put land covenants, like your house had to be, it had to be 1,500 square foot. You had to have a 2.5 car garage. You had to have a setback, from the road of 75 feet. And when you talk about that, it's like, okay, well, you need a 2.5 car garage, and were they really looking at keeping out affordable housing of these communities in their covenants? You talk about the fossil fuel that you're using to have a driveway, whether it's asphalt or whether it's concrete, of 75 feet long, on a lot. So you're using the back of the lot versus really restrains at how you can put your house on that ladder, and the positioning of it. So I think it does take some community involvement from your local governments to embrace this type of housing. Might not be so hard if you're working in kind of like an infill project. So you're working on a 1/4 acre lot, you might have more flexibility to because some of you guys have mentioned some of those bungalow style houses, they're not much bigger than 1,000 square feet.
I know.
And so you're just kind of reintroducing an old concept. But people have, like, well, their American dream is this 3-bedroom, 3-bath house with a family room and, with open design. But if you look at, what is functional, either for an older American family or, your new family, that's something they can get in and they can be a starter home and then they can grow into their next home. And so the kind of modest size home can be something that is achievable. But if communities, have to kind of reimagine like what having that effective home is for people, and it's not, it's not going to be this 2,000 square foot home, but I think a lot of local governments are letting even these small home parks come in. They're not letting you have mobile home parks, but they're letting you have small home parks, and then just making sure that your homes are designed with some sort of standard and code. And again, if you look at the code, a lot of people say it's built to code, but code is the minimum. Whether it's minimum property protection, minimum protection for the family, and if you increase that, saying, well, we want this to be better than code, then you can deal with how it's anchored, how it outperforms on the energy side. So those type of things, like you can develop the codes, but we're saying we're going to have something better than code.
Some workforce development and training too, I think, like what Neil was talking about, looking at using alternative technologies like SIP panels, and people being trained how to build them and use them. And those are real important, I think, areas too, that can cause some hardships if you don't have the qualification of the contractors available. And then the supply costs, right? The supply chain, which, I mean, look what's happening now in Canada with the bridges closed. It's all wood and whatever. So there's just these external factors that you can't control.
No, definitely. I there's so many supply and demand issues going on right now that it's just making everything skyrocket. So I can't even imagine like the cost of building housing. So it was one of you that mentioned this, but how can we incorporate renewable energy into these a little bit more in depth into these new housing communities? And what does that look like?
Well, renewable energy planning, I think, especially if you want to get to net zero, is going to become real important. And getting back to the solar decathlon, that was one of the other goals, was it had to be a net zero energy home, meaning the amount of home that the energy used it had to produce. So you're net zero. And when you look at that, you then want to look at what type of fuel you want to bring in. And usually if you're doing electrification, then you can start looking at solar and solar arrays, solar storage, as a way of heating and cooling the home. And there's all design calculations and feasibility studies that could determine all that. I know, Neil, you've been looking at solar. Have you been looking at geothermal at all? And for a lot of the reservations, that their main primary source of heating is oil or propane, that's very expensive. So if you could come up with an alternative way of heating and cooling homes where they're still comfortable, and it's renewable energy, I think that's a win-win for everybody. But I'll let you take it from here, because I think you guys have been looking at solar, and then were you also looking at geothermal? I don't remember.
Yeah, we were big into geothermal here a few years ago when, again, most of our villages we have 8 villages throughout Wisconsin, and most of them were off the beaten path, away from natural gas.
Right.
And so we had the LP gas, and I can't remember what year it was, but we had kind of an LP shortage, and like even before COVID, we had shortages. And we were paying, say, normally $1.50 per gallon for LP, liquid petroleum, and those kind of tanks that you see sitting around. And for whatever reason, that year we had some of our communities that were paying $5.50 or $6, you know, so we went from $1.50 for normal planning and budgeting for a family, and they might spend $1,000 a winter on propane. And so we went up to tripling the price for families. And it got, you know, we had to do some programs, we got some grants, we did some loans, you know, so people could fill their tanks. That just was just crazy. So we looked at any new houses that we were going to develop, what was that cost per therm be, and how could we get it down lower. The geothermal heating is great. That cost per therm is about 1/3 as LP, in, you know, in heating your home, and it also provides cooling for your home, and it cools or it heats your water heaters too. But it's a significant investment. Your standard furnace here, you know, is a 93% efficient forced air furnace, was about $3,500. A geothermal system installed is about $12,000. So it is a significant investment. You have to have also out in your yard, either you have to have these big long coils go in, or you have to sink a well. And just depending on where you are, you know, that was also a significant cost. So we did invest, I think we did about 12 units, you know, for geothermal on our new units that were going in. Our community, we did a couple of community center developments, and it is affordable. Again, it's about 1/3 the cost of LP, and it does also do cooling, and it heats your water heater. But in comparison, though, at the same time, I don't know if you guys are familiar, like environmentally, but we had these, you know, people talk about fracking. You know, they're the frack sand, and they're fracking out. Yeah. So where they get that sand to frack is from Wisconsin. Wisconsin has one of the best sand. However, it fits together and it seals these oil wells and pushes that, you know, well. And so but you have to dry it. So the gas companies came into Wisconsin with these natural gas lines, and it must be something with Ho-Chunks, like wherever Ho-Chunks live, that's where this frac sand is. So we had all of a sudden natural gas lines going right by our community. So we were able to take advantage of that. And put in natural gas into a lot of our villages. So again, it's about the same cost. It's about 1/3 of net LP. However, you don't have, it's like a $400 part that you change from LP to natural gas. You don't have that big investment. Now, it is a fossil fuel. It does fluctuate in price. This year, it's a little bit higher, you know, than electricity. But it's still very in line with you know, that added cost for development. So it's a little bit cheaper right now than geothermal. But for the people that have the geothermal, they love it. But it does cost a little more to install. Back to the question of getting ready for sustainability, though, and again, that common sense of putting solar panels up or having enough solar. The cost per watt has been coming down for solar development, and where the challenges that we had in Wisconsin, we're paying about 11.5 cents per kilowatt. So you don't have as rapid payback with solar as you would in other areas where you have a higher cost per watt or per kilowatt. But when you're developing your home, again, that's part of your positioning on your lot with your roof. And so like a 612 roof or slightly greater than 612 is in Wisconsin, the optimum angle is about 27 degrees facing that south and west. And so that's what we've kind of mandated. Again, we want to have south facing roofs at that maximum angle if we can. That way you can just bolt them right onto your roof, and it provides, and if we're not ready or we don't have the money in our budget right now for that solar on roofs, at least have the roof ready with conduit that is going down to your junction boxes, and then outside wherever you're going to have your inverter put on the side of your house. So we call it being solar panel ready. And to do that at that time you're building your house or putting your house together is so much more affordable than when you're going to try and retrofit it. So we have gone, you know, to at least put having the houses solar ready, or if we're going to put a new roof on, be able to kind of just make it ready even for our rehab projects. So those are some of those areas that we've tried to forecast. Like if we get other grants, you know, can we put them on the houses now?
Right. And that's so important what Neil just said, because if you plan in phases, so let's say you get the house, you get it solar ready, and then you can start looking for other grant opportunities, maybe through the tribal DOE program or HUD, and then secure some additional funding for your next phase and then your next phase. It just makes it more affordable and manageable to maybe develop that way, where, you know, you're kind of on this journey to net zero and renewable energy and total sustainability, which is exciting when you get there.
Yeah, we really are hoping that the battery storage
Yeah,
can become affordable, or there's better methods, because we really do lose. We lose out on not being able to store that solar energy
right.
generated.
Electricity. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of the cooperative issue. So up here in Wisconsin, we have the electric cooperatives
Mm-hmm.
versus the PSCs, or the Public Service Commission utilities. And so the cooperatives don't have to offer you the same incentives that other people offer. And so we get down to, on the net metering side, and they, so they say, oh, peak hours, we're going to give you this, or, on our low demand, we're not even going to give you anything. Thank you for your power. Where the PSCs are a little more generous with what kind of incentives and rebates they have to offer to the solar panels. We've installed on, so we manage about 300 properties, and right now we have about 140 that have solar panels on. And we're hoping that's a long-term goal, is we're going to keep putting solar panels on all of our projects.
No, that's amazing. I was gonna say, because I remember when we first did the first annual energy conference, I remember storage used to be much, much more expensive than it is now. Obviously, right now it's still pricey, but I think it's a little bit more accessible in comparison to like 3, 4 years ago when we first started really talking about it. So I think we'll get there. We'll get to a point where it really does become cost efficient. I mean, I think you have to. I mean, saving Mother Earth, right? That's what
Right.
I think of. Like,
Right.
think of longevity, long term, like protecting our planet and using something that's natural, and and all of that. So, I mean, if they can do it in Sweden with wind, we can definitely do it in the US with,
Biofuels. Yeah,
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 yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yep.
yeah. All right. So with that, let's talk about universal design. Can y'all explain what universal design is as it relates to these types of projects?
I'll take a stab. Universal design is making your home functional and ease of movement. There's a whole checklist. We have a law on universal design. If you're building a large housing complex, certain amount of units have to be universally designed. It can get really detailed, but it's just allowing for ease of use and movement for people who do have disabilities. But the key with universal design too is to create that home so you don't even know it's incorporated in the home. And like what Neil was talking about, your door, you want a 36-inch doorway so you have a turn radius if somebody is in a wheelchair, easy accessibility in and out, and maybe some other significantly design features. Some of refrigerators, they have shelves that are easy accessible, and temperature controls if someone's in a wheelchair. And getting back to the bathroom, ease of movement in and out of a bathroom and a bathtub, and transfer to the toilet. So um, specific rules and requirements, codes, which we don't want to go into now, but once again, the key is to incorporate these key features, but you don't even know they're in the home. And I don't know, Neil, is there anything else? You probably have more, that's a big concern. And some of the designs we've been looking at, it's amazing how you can incorporate these features so everybody can use them. They're universal for everybody.
Yeah, and I think Kate, kind of gave you kind of that overview. You really don't want to do it like you're in a hospital room or something, or it's things that are built into the home. Again, I'm going to go back to that term that I keep using, is common sense approach. Levers, and that's a key part of universal design. It helps with people that might have arthritis or might not have a hand that works anymore, but they can press down and use the lever. All doorways being the same, striving to have all doors It helps save on the standardization. Again, if you're managing properties, you have one door size that can work, and so it's easy to help manage how your windows latch, or where your light switches are, or your plugins. You kind of have some leeway there where you have to have it at this height for code and so on. But it's kind of like things like, oh yeah, why aren't they a little bit higher up? Why do people have to bend way over to plug in their TV or their lights or whatever, and for kids to be able to reach up and touch the light, why not make that a little bit, it's just, well, that's where it's always been. But some other things that are, take advantage of, when somebody rings your doorbell, like it has a light that could blink, or having a fire alarm that has a strobe that also goes off, not just a noise.
Right.
And so there's little things like that like, oh yeah, that just seems like it makes sense. Like why wouldn't you have a strobe? Because like, especially like my daughter, she has her ear pods in all the time, and you're
Right.
having a conversation with her, and she doesn't know, even though I'm talking. But if you have that light blink, then she looks, or and so it's yeah, it just makes those the universal, the part also of ease of use, like the transition. Like if you do have a family, or if you moved in and they live there, if they got in an accident or had to use crutches, or say they got older, kind of aging in place, it helps have that where you don't have to find them a different unit, because you've already had that that shower seat installed, or you have that same seat that works as a transfer station to
Right.
a toilet, and maybe you go with a higher toilet. It might not be easy for people to have potty trained kids, but that higher toilet or seat height does help out people that are coming to visit. And why not have a grab bar? I think we worked on, many years ago, slip, trips, and falls. That is, not having handholds in bathrooms um, is a huge number of injuries a year, every year in the bathroom. And so having handholds that are secure with backing in place, in the different areas of your home, really does save people, and it's one of those things that, yeah, that's universal design. It's not necessarily saying, oh, well, we're ADA compliant, but it's just, again, going back to helping out people like that, for their living environment.
And Neil said something really key. It's also very important for aging in place and dealing with elders. So as they get older, they can remain in place and remain home and still be functional. That's real key. Yep.
That's great. And so I guess, Kate, can you tell us a little bit about what is Elevate's role when you're designing and developing these small multi-housing projects?
Sure. So we provide technical assistance, and we're working with Neil and his staff and really having fun doing it. And some key areas, one is the building energy modeling. And what that is all about is you take key factors of a building and you put it into software, eCrest, Trace, and it can be new construction or major rehab, and it will give the owner or the developer a good indication of how well the building is performing and where the building needs to see improvement. So it's a real key feature where, maybe like what we were talking about with Neil, we were looking at a certain design. It had some really key elements in, but it was too expensive. So we could maybe bring down the cost of the windows and look at double pane instead of triple. It will also give you a good sense of where your money's going, how much is going to domestic hot water heating, how much is going to cooling, just general heating, and then plug load. So it's a real helpful tool in design and making final decisions and getting the building to the cost per square foot that you need to get to. We also will help with renewable energy planning, like Neil was talking about with solar, and then also doing research, identification, and assistance in identifying appropriate project funding opportunities. And we do a lot of work with stakeholder engagement too. I'd say those are our key areas.
So if any other tribal community is thinking about developing a project like this, who should they reach out to?
They can feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be glad to talk to them and see what they're interested in and what we could and couldn't do for them. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me. That would be great. And I'm really so your conference in February. It's just all remote now. It's hard. It's hard. So, but I think we'll try to tune in and hopefully maybe next year we can all be on site again and just talk about things. Yeah, yeah, it will. It'll be.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any other questions. Crystal, do you have any questions? No. Any final remarks, Kate, Neil?
No, just thank you for hosting us. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Thank you guys for Native Learning Center and everything that you do for the
And all,
tribe.
yeah.
No, I absolutely love this episode. So you guys have made me kind of look at my own personal living space with so many like different points of views. I'm over here thinking, wow, people that built this townhome were really smart because I have a beautiful like patio door and I have all this natural light and I save so much money monthly on electricity because as soon as I wake up, I turn everything off. I open up all the blinds. So I'm listening to Neil. I was like, wow, this was really ingenious. So,
Shading.
so no, I feel like I learned so much from both of you today. So thank you for sharing. And so everybody, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you, Kate. And thank you, Neil, for joining us. And as always, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you enjoy our show, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and also visit www.nativelearningcenter.com for more information on our virtual trainings and webinars. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Crystal.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.